We're just waiting for the broadcast.
And you're muted.
Yeah, I just unmuted. Would you? Never mind, I'll do the door.
All right, team, are we ready? Is everybody ready?
Yes.
Right. I would like to bring this meeting to order. It's 6:01. This is the Town of Loomis Land Use Committee meeting, March 15th, 2022. We are meeting here in the train depot and also are meeting via Zoom, and you can get to that Zoom link if you go onto our agenda. And now we will do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May we have roll call, please?
Yes. Chairperson Jan Clark-Kretz,
Here.
Bonnie London.
Here.
Okay, so I don't see Tim or AJ. Jean Wilson,
She's here.
I see her. Beth Cohen,
Oh, yes, she's here.
and no Randy Elder, correct?
Right.
Okay, and I don't see Ramona or Greg, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, now is the time for committee comment for items not on the agenda. Seeing none, there's nobody online, is there, that has any comments about public members?
So we do have two public members online, attendees, and one here at the depot. Now is your chance for public comments for items not on the agenda. If you wish, please raise your hand.
And I see Randy and Ramona coming on.
Did you get that, Carol?
What was that?
Randy and Ramona just arrived.
Oh, okay, so Ramona is here. And Randy is online. Got it, okay.
Correct. And I do have a hand raised from a member of our public.
Okay.
Adrian, you can unmute and talk.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. My name is Adrian Giordano. I live on Rutherford. And I hope I'm at the correct meeting, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. I was inquiring about a piece of property at the corner of Barton Road and Rockland Road. My neighbors have told me that there is going to be a housing development. I'm sorry?
Sorry, we are having a little bit of technical difficulties. Can you please start over, just because I think we weren't really able to hear you and you cut out a little bit as we were trying to mess with our technology. Could you just start fresh, please?
Certainly. So my name is Adrian. I live on Rutherford Canyon Road, and I am inquiring about the corner of Barton Road and Rockland Road. I have heard from my neighbors that there may be a new charter school built there, as well as a housing development placed there as well. And I was inquiring if there had been any decisions made on the amount of housing and if the school was indeed going to be placed there.
Okay, Mary Beth, would you like to answer that?
Sure. Good evening, Adrian. My name is Mary Beth. I'm the planning director for the town of Loomis. Through these land use committee meetings, we opened it up for private property owners to bring forth any land use change requests that they would like, either on their parcel or felt was appropriate for a certain area. And within that process, that parcel was previously owned by the Dominican Sisters. They sold that property to a housing developer. The Loomis Union Unified School District has been working with that landowner on securing the corner of Barton and Rockland Roads for a new charter school site. I believe it's 10 acres right on the corner. And then the remainder, the developer request was to, those parcels are in the residential agricultural district, 4.6 acre minimum lot sizes. And the developer requested a land use change to RR, rural residential. So the committees, with our land use element update, the town was broken into 4 different zones. And that particular zone for that committee reviewed their request and is recommending to the Planning Commission to proceed with that request with the condition that the Loomis Unified School District has in place an agreement to place that school on the corner. If for some reason that agreement falls out, then that land use change request would be off the table. Going forward, all land use recommendations will be going forward to the Planning Commission for an additional review. The Planning Commission will review them and make recommendation to the Town Council. The Town Council will be the final body in approving or disapproving any land use change requests.
When they approved the residential part of that acreage, was it for the 2.6 acres per home, or had that changed to a different?
The RR is a 40,000 square foot minimum lot size, so they would become 1 acre parcels, kind of mimicking next door at, what's the name of that subdivision?
St. Francis Woods.
St. Francis Woods, correct.
Okay. And so it appears as though both the school and this home development is going forward then? St. Francis Woods.
Conditionally, yes. There are many things that need to play out between the developer and the school district. By the time that project that goes under consideration with the Planning Commission, that matter should be resolved. If it's not resolved, then the Planning Commission cannot make recommendation to the council.
I see. Maybe I should be addressing the Planning Commission, not you, but were there any provisions provided for improving traffic in the area as a result of the school and the housing?
All of those improvement matters, circulation, all of that would undergo a CEQA review, an Environmental Quality Act review, where they look at traffic flows, traffic counts, and all of that, project specific. So at this time, those kind of studies aren't warranted.
Okay.
And if I may add, Adrian, there has been no project that has been brought forward. It's just been a land change request. So once it goes to the Planning Commission, once it gets to that level and there's actually a project that has been sent into the town, that would be the best time for you and all the members of our town and public members to come in and make comment and get more details.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I don't know. Does the Planning Commission have their own meeting times?
Yes, it's the 4th Tuesday of every month at 7 o'clock.
First Tuesday every month. Okay.
All right.
All
So
right.
we
Thank you
started-
very much for your time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming, your comment. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
And if I could just add, this is our last committee to review the general plan updates. After this committee concludes, then town staff will go forward with preparing the environmental documentations and draft EIRs and things like that that have to be circulated. I think our timeline for Planning Commission review is probably at this point, maybe May, if that's accurate, sometime there.
Actually, Mary Beth, let me kind of clarify. So this committee will make a recommendation to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission will review the committee's recommended draft general plan. They will then recommend to the council that that is the plan that is considered in the environmental document. Then the environmental document will be prepared, circulated for 45 days. Then it comes back to the Planning Commission for a decision. Planning Commission will make a recommendation to the town council. And at this point in time, that schedule would have the town council reviewing the general plan recommendations in December of this year. So there's a long way out. And the other thing to be clear, there has been no application by the landowner or the school to do any projects on that site. They cannot make application for that until the land use change. So we're looking at after December before we actually see a project come forward for review.
So I need to wait quite a while before I start attending the Planning Commission meetings.
I would recommend you monitor the agendas, and I know,
Okay.
Mary Beth, there's a way to get on a list to get those agendas and monitor what's going on, because
Okay.
there's going to be a number of steps where this potential project will come up before the commission and the council over the next 6 months.
Okay.
So I think I would ask Adrian, are you on the town's email list?
I am, yes.
Okay, perfect. So you're already receiving the notifications. And
Yes.
so you just want to kind of start watching. You can look at every agenda,
Mhm.
read through it, and you're going to be able to see, just get a brief synopsis of what the committee is going to be talking about that night.
Okay.
And with that, when it's on the agenda, if any of these items are coming forward, there's going to be staff reports. That'll be your time to really read through it and kind of see what's going on. And that way you'll be prepared for the meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Carol.
Adrian, this is Bonnie London. I'm on the Planning Commission. The town manager does have a monthly town Tuesday meetings for the public, and the point is for him to be able to answer any questions that you might have. And so you can find that information on the town's website. And then the mayor, Jenny Nisley, she does the same, and it's the mayor Mondays, but I don't remember if it's the first or second Mondays. But we can get that in, it's the first Monday of the month. And it's usually here at the train depot at 10 o'clock, but you can find that information on the town's website, or you can contact any of the town council members if you have any questions.
Okay. Thank you again. Thank you, Bonnie.
All right, any other comments for items not on our agenda tonight? And now it's time to adopt our agenda. I so move. A motion by Bonnie, is there a second? I will second. We have a roll call, please.
Jan, was that you that seconded?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Bonnie London,
Yes.
Jan Clark Kretz,
Yes.
Jean Wilson. You're muted, Jean.
Okay, yes.
Beth Cohen
Yes.
and Randy Elder.
Yes.
Thank you. And I see Greg has joined us.
Right. Now for public comment on our consent agenda. Anybody have comments on the consent agenda? Either on our committee or by the members of the public? And remember, people that are on Zoom, you just need to do your raise your hand function if you would like to participate in public comment. And I see no hands up, so is there a motion to accept
Oh,
the consent?
excuse me, Chair. Somebody.
Looks like Randy's got his hand up.
Yeah, yes, Jan, I can barely hear you. I don't know if it's for the whole committee, but I can barely hear you.
Okay, can the rest?
Me too.
You cannot hear me?
Okay,
Can you hear me, Jean?
Yes, but you've been unclear. It's hard to distinguish what you're saying.
Jan, is your microphone on? It sounds like you're coming through on Mary Beth's microphone rather than yours.
No, it's on. I wonder if it's because hers is on as well.
I don't, you sound much better now.
Yeah,
Okay, I will hold still and talk this loud. Right. So now we are at the point of a motion for perhaps approving our consent. I move to accept the consent agenda.
Second,
Roll call, please.
Yes, Bonnie London,
Yes.
Jean Wilson,
yes.
Karen Clark Kretz,
Yes.
Beth Cohen,
Yes.
and Randy Elder.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now we're going to go right into our committee matters and Mary Beth.
Yes, welcome everybody. Tonight's Land Use Committee meeting, we're going to go through the items on the agenda. Actually, one thing you have to do is oh, you did consent, I'm sorry. I don't have that page of my agenda handy, so I will apologize, but we're going to kick this off with continuing where we left off with the land use element, goals, policies, objectives, and that document. Mark Teague from Placework is here to drive us through that matter. And picking up where we left off, or Mark, if you'd like to do a little intro about where we've been and where we're going, that might be beneficial to the group.
Could I ask a question first?
Yeah, sure.
We finished the table, and we spent so much time on coverage, we really didn't look at height limits. And so when I thought about it later, I was thinking we should have probably looked at that, because most of the things are 35 feet, but residential medium and high density are only 30 feet. And I was thinking we should have discussed it. So at this point, is it the place for me to raise that question is when it comes to the Planning Commission rather than this committee? Or are we allowed to go back and look at that?
I have to go back and check my notes, but my recommendation was that you did that in your zoning code. You dealt with the height limits in your zoning code.
They're not going to be on that chart then, the one that we passed?
That wouldn't be my recommendation.
Okay. So that's that whole table that we looked at and talked about coverage is going to move to out of what we're doing right now.
No, it still includes coverages. It includes all of the stuff that we discussed, including density and intensity. What it doesn't include is stuff that belongs in the zoning, such as building height.
Mark, it does have height in the third column.
I understand, but my recommendation in the background document and in the comments I made was that not be included, but
Okay.
you can look at it if you'd
Okay.
like.
So it is not going to be included in the table the final table for this group.
That would be my recommendation, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that from before. Okay, if that's the case, then can be dealt with there.
Andy, does that work for you guys? I know we talked about it.
yes, it does. And so I think the recommendation would be at the Planning Commission level to move that over to the zoning code and remove that column for consideration in the general plan update.
It's just cleaner that way, honestly. Anyway, that's where I went.
Okay, that's fine then. Thank you.
Okay, so we left off at the goals, policies, and objectives. And as I was starting to put together, what was driving me nuts was the numbering was all over the place because so many different committees had looked at it. And I started to get a migraine looking at it. I thought, well, if I'm having difficulty, the committee's probably difficulty. So what I did was I stripped everything out of the element that we had been working on, put them in some semblance of a numerical order, and then tried to organize things around. Some of them we had objectives for, some we didn't, as Jean correctly pointed out at the last meeting. And so I believe this was sent to the committee. Does anybody not have this document? Cool. Right, so in the purple text is stuff that we've already looked at. I just didn't want the committee to have to go back and forth the things they've already reviewed if they even want to. The yellow highlight is new text, and in this case, it's usually the objectives. I don't think I have anything else in there. And in the red text, we had some sort of orphan policies that seem to still apply, but may not be under the right goal or objective. And then I thought we would go through this, tweak the wording as we saw fit, and move through it in that fashion. Just easier to do as a single monolith than as sort of bouncing all over the place. And so with that, that's the first page. And Chair, I don't know how you want to do this, whether it's
Comments on page 1. Basically policy LU 1.2.2. I think the verb in the second line should be have instead of has, since there are 2 nouns before it.
the question, shall we put
Equestrian activity shall be protected by considering density and design. Oh no, never mind. It's the effect is the noun covering. So you're correct. Sorry.
Could you write a note to my English teacher? Because that'll probably be the first time I've ever actually been correct in that regard. Thank you, Jean.
Sorry about that.
Oh, it's fine.
That's all on page. That's all I had on page 1.
Now you'll notice in here that we have shalls, a lot of shalls. Part of that is just the attitude of the town that, look, this is not some little place where you can just run roughshod. And the other part of that is that state law has been changing. And if you don't have something directive in your general plan, it causes all sorts of issues later with certain projects. So to the maximum extent that it makes sense, we have made these directive and not optional. Any other comments? 1.2.3.
The only other one is that downtown, the word downtown seems to be kind of used in different ways. In policy in 1.1.3, lower intensity uses outside of downtown. Sometimes we seem to be using it as the specific downtown, like Taylor Road and Horseshoe Bar, and other times it kind of seems to be referring to the denser part of town rather than the rural areas. I'm just thinking we should, and if someplace else is called downtown core, I just think as we go along, maybe we should watch out and see that we're being consistent along the way to whatever definition we did come up with. That's all.
Okay, that's a good call. I thought I caught all the downtown core because it was all over the place, but maybe I didn't get them all. Okay, hearing no objection, I'll just scroll down a little bit so you can see from objective 1.2 through 1.2.5.
Is it realistic to have to design buildings to blend into the landscape? I'm not sure what that means. I know you didn't make that up. That came from a previous version, but what does it mean besides building a soddy that you're going to blend into the landscape?
Oh, the sod hut, basically. I agree with you, Gene. This to me is a feel-good policy that helps you have your design guidelines. And I would argue that buildings don't blend very well.
What did they mean?
What they mean is they don't want garish colors, they don't want obnoxious sizes, things like that that are regulated by your zoning code. It's very amorphous.
Is there another, do we need to keep it? If so, is there a way to find some other ameliorating sort of term?
Actually, the best thing that we could do here is that.
Is what?
I just deleted it. You've got coverage elsewhere in here that deals with native vegetation, natural forms, and we're going to have design guidelines anyway, or design standards anyhow. So I would say just leave that for implementation. I don't know that you need it.
The whole policy or just A?
The whole policy.
Okay.
I have a question about that though. Shouldn't that policy then provide direction for the design standards?
It can, but as it's currently written, it doesn't, Chair. So if you want to embellish the policy, we should do that. But this happens to be under the objective to protect agriculture and open space in Loomis. And I think you've got it pretty much covered already up here.
Well, the other point is I don't believe the town of Loomis in their code at this moment in time reviews agricultural buildings or residential buildings on agricultural land for design review. Design review is generally within your more intense areas.
So out in the periphery, Andy, they can build pretty much whatever they want.
Again, my understanding is you get a building permit in the agricultural area, then you build what you want. There's no design review by the town.
Pretty much throughout the entire town, other than in our downtown. If you're in an area that has a design review, an HOA, your homes are reviewed. For any of the other parts of our town, people can build their house the way they want to build it. And the only design review that we loosely state in any of our RR, RE, or RA is that they blend in with the community itself. None of that's actually required, but that's what we ask. And then we specifically ask if they're doing a secondary structure on their site, that the secondary structure has to blend in with the primary house. That's pretty much, as far as our rural lots go, that's the only thing that's looked at.
What if we just said blend into the community then?
Yep.
Because that says fit the area, not that your house has to go into.
Again, okay, that's fine.
Well, but this policy is only with respect to our rural areas, it's not the whole town, and it would be nice, to Jean's point, to sort of say, design buildings to blend into our community as a whole.
I think we kind of do that in other places.
I don't know that a building on a 5 or 10 acre lot can really blend in with anything. It's not close enough to matter. I wouldn't think, right? That's not kind of the whole point. They're out there and really widely spaced. Again, this is pretty innocuous. So we could make that change, or you could dilute it altogether. I don't know that it makes beans worth a difference here.
It's okay with me if we delete the whole thing, but
Ramona has her hand up.
I agree. I think we ought to just delete the whole thing.
Does anybody disagree with that? Book numbers doesn't look like it, so let's delete it and move on.
Done. Okay, this is the goal that talks about protecting major landscape features, significant topography, rod outcroppings, open meadows, grazing areas, grazing areas. And then this is a new objective.
One comment about LU 2.1, you might want to change the spelling of development.
yes.
It's the new spelling. Every now and then my version of Word decides that it's just not going to do spell check.
There you go.
And it's weird because I have all of the languages set.
Well, that looks better.
Yeah. See, go to English. And see, look at that. It says do not check spelling or grammar. I don't know why it does that. It's very annoying. Thank you. Good catch.
So I have two questions on policy, on the first policy. One is we say we've changed it to where clustering is necessary to protect these features. Sometimes it's advisable, but not necessarily necessary. We had a small cluster development we approved. They could have gone with dividing it up and sticking it on individual pieces of property, but we just felt it was better to pull those out and put them in a couple of small separate protected parcels. So we did it because it was maybe advisable, but other places it may be necessary. So if it's not necessary, do we still have the ability to approve it, or is this restricted to absolutely necessary?
You're the determiner of that when the project's before you. If you feel it's appropriate, then it works. If you feel it isn't, then it doesn't.
Okay. And the second thing is, we talked about before putting back in the language from the current general plan about clustering is not to be used to increase, to maximize the density. And I thought you were going to put that into policies on clustering, but I don't see it back here anyplace. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep. I believe there's actually a paragraph in the land use plan that talks about the fact that that the town does not guarantee you get full density. And that pretty much covers it.
Well, I suppose technically it covers it, but it doesn't tell the developer, here's what we expect of you.
Again, clustering is meant to be a benefit to the town, not something the developer is going to want to do necessarily. It's meant to be something that the town can use to get something they want in the horse trading that goes on with development.
Except in the big project that we had, which was Montserrat, it was not for the town's benefit. It was for the developers' benefit to make a little village up there instead of spreading things out. So that's part of what our historical experience is, that it was the developer wanting to do that rather than for his benefit rather than ours.
Didn't the town benefit from the additional open space?
We didn't do the clustering. It was highly, highly, highly opposed.
Got it. Okay, fair enough. So it never got approved.
Right. Because of that, it got withdrawn pretty fast because there was outcry, big outcry against it.
Fair enough.
So that's why the thing was put in about it should not be used to maximize the density.
But what if it does maximize the density, Gene?
Well, sometimes it would, but
Well, not the way I have it written here.
I didn't see that you wrote anything. Is that what the old, I don't remember what the old language is. I didn't look it up again.
I can look it up and check the old language, but from my perspective, that's essentially what you just said.
While you're doing that, Ramona has her hand up.
Just to go along with this comment, I don't necessarily think it shouldn't be allowed to maximize density. I mean, if it's acceptable that it's clustered and it maximizes density, what's wrong with that? Why wouldn't you not allow it to maximize density if the cluster development meets all other goals of, protecting sensitive areas and things? So I think I'm okay with that, to let it maximize the density.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement, because there could be cases where, you can still maximize density with clustering and enhance the overall project, as opposed to having it spread around. And I think it's kind of a case by case basis that you just have to, make that call. But it is not a given that they can maximize density. It's like they'll have to put forth a good argument.
Yeah. I mean, clustering may not maximize
Right.
density, but it could.
Right.
Just, that's where the give and the take is. Yeah. But I don't think we should blanket statement say that it won't.
or that you can't.
Mhm.
It's almost like if you do maximize density, it's kind of a bad thing from the get-go, and that may or may not be the case.
Randy, you had your hand up. Did you wish to speak?
Well, I did, and maybe the way to phrase it would be to say clustering may be used to maximize density, because there may be situations where that's appropriate. And to me, the key word here is may. Remember, these issues will all be coming before the planning commission and the town council. So they'll be reviewed at two levels in addition to community meetings. I'm okay with going with the may or may not, but I would think the may perhaps could be more appropriate.
Well, in that case, I guess
Maybe.
I would go back to the one in red below that doesn't guarantee.
I would just delete that statement. That confuses it.
Yeah, I think so too.
Clustering may or may not, just eliminate it.
Just to take it out.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Yes. Cool.
Yeah, problem solved.
Beth has her hand up.
I knew this was in here somewhere. So,
Whoops.
Hold on, Beth.
Do we want to know what it used to say? Because I have it open. I can read it to you.
yes,
It used to say, this was item number 6, the town may approve the clustering of development with no increases in net density on sites where clustering is feasible and necessary to protect sensitive and natural resources such as creeks, native. And so we have all that. And then the last part of it was the option of clustering is offered by the town as a means of preserving environmental and scenic resources and shall not be used as a method for achieving the maximum density allowed by the general plan. The priority for rural residential subdivision design must be the preservation of environmental resources and rural character.
and I think I noted a couple of things in there that we can't limit the maximum density we have in our general plan artificially. So we can't make up a number because we think it's too big. That option has been taken away from us by the state.
I do like the fact that it used to say with no increase in net density. I think that.
Well, we don't have that option either. There is the potential for density bonus and all sorts of other things that can go in there. We can't violate our general plan anyway. So in other words, I don't have any grief with it, except that we can't violate it anyway. We can't increase the net density, and that isn't even a term that's defined in terms of how we would look at planting. So you would just say increase in density over that. And again, with the new laws, I don't really know how far down that rabbit hole we can go by limiting that. So what we did here was we have, the town does not guarantee any may be able to achieve the maximum densities designated by the general plan or the minimum parcel sizes provided by the zoning ordinance. And that was a rewording of that to get it out of that morass.
Ramona, you had your hand up and I lowered it, but
Well,
I'm sorry.
I have another more general comment on this objective and most of its policies. The question I have with this is that how does this objective relate to development that would be within more of the downtown area, say like the former village parcels? Because to me, these objectives are great when you're talking about, in particular, probably residential development outside of what you would be considered more the downtown area. And I think that's great, but how would this relate? Is there like a downtown? I think there was like previously a downtown master plan that would treat the downtown-ish area differently than these objectives, because, just even the village, the former village proposal, it's essentially, most of that land is considered to be infill, just because it hasn't been developed for X amount of years, forever, right? Since the town was formed, a lot of trees have grown up to become larger trees, but do you really need to require developers just in really this more, especially, I think only the village kind of property is the only place left in town that's kind of questionable about this, with maybe a few other places that, those places should be more or less have design guidelines consistent with a rural, small town, downtown area perspective and design, rather than constantly wanting to save every possible tree or rock outcropping that there is, if that makes sense to people. Just because it hasn't been developed for years and trees grew up, does it mean that those are all worth in needing of the shalls, the shalls that are in this? I like shalls, but is there a separate, or do the design guidelines for the downtown kind of village area take precedence over this objective? Because to me, this objective is great for just about, most residential development everywhere else. But when you start talking about commercial development, I kind of wonder about a little bit. I mean, Homewood did a wonderful job, and it's appropriate out there to do what Homewood did and to demand what the Homewood site did. That was great. It's at the edge of town. It's supposed to read, even though there's a commercial development there, it's supposed to read more rural and in keeping with nature. But, as you get closer into town, having that rural nature part just doesn't, it's not necessarily needing to be there, if you ask me, because I don't want it to handcuff and prohibit projects from adding to the viability and the walkable density, just because you're trying to preserve things that may have developed and grown up there over the last 30, 40 years, because nothing's been built there. I'm hoping that makes sense. That's always been kind of my issue with this set of objectives, is where is its true application intended to be? Sorry, it was long-winded.
So what would you do with policy 2.14, the one above the red one, which is about new commercial development? And I can see, it says shall and integrate, but we don't necessarily mean that they have to incorporate every native tree, and not necessarily every small outcrop. Obviously, creeks are going to get their own sets of restrictions anyway.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's probably the policy that really kind of brought this home to me, is like, you're talking about commercial development, but yet, if it's appropriately in town-ish, really, and to me, kind of that kind of walkable quarter mile designation is kind of what I kind of look at, is, you want to have your quarter mile around the downtown core be very walkable, read as it is a small urban town, urban in quotes, if you will. I don't want people to get the wrong idea of what I mean by urban, but appropriately urban, without, I think the village site really kind of, I think that's what people were really pitting against, I think, was that they, many people viewed it as not being appropriate, where I completely differ with that. It's mostly infill, and it's part of town that has never been developed. But, to me, it shouldn't be as rural, if you will, or as have low of density as I think a lot of people were wanting, just because of the walkability factor of wanting it to be walkable and have more of an economic and even, vitality of just more people in the area to add vitality and walkability to your town.
So can
And
we add excluding downtown center area from?
so that's my question is there a whole policy or, I know there was a document like a downtown master plan or something like this document that really addressed, I think even including the village site, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not totally sure. I can't
The
remember
downtown master plan that
Yeah.
had been adopted at one point in time has been incorporated into this general plan I believe in your 2020 plan. So that master plan no longer exists, is no longer applicable. And those policies were incorporated into this general plan. So there is nothing out there guiding what happens in the downtown at this point in time other than the general plan.
So how do we make this, the 1.4, how do we get to what we want them to do without making it ridiculously restrictive so that they have to preserve every tree and rock outcropping? Because
Thank you, Jean. You said it more succinctly than what I did.
we have hopefully sometime the TD, the Turtle Island property, which we want them to preserve a lot of stuff. And on the other hand, it isn't reasonable to assume that nothing is going to be, but when you say you shall preserve, it says to me you can't take out anything without.
So what if, looking at this one here, 2.1.2, the plan designed to preserve blah, blah, blah. So the end result is various natural appearance. We have grading there. We can certainly soften this. We can eliminate it altogether. I would caution you to try to look to not use a single policy or objective to look at every potential development. It's an aggregate of all of them. And we have later policies that we need to talk about that specifically deal with the downtown and provide you options there. And then the town will need to figure out what isn't. Maybe in some places you want them to do all this. Maybe in the downtown it's not appropriate. I don't know that scraping the site clean and starting all over is in the town's vocabulary, regardless of where this property is. So somewhere in between, we can figure that out. But as it stands now, that could actually come out. I think it's covered in other places.
So a question I have with this then is more of a PR kind of question is, when developments pop up for probably Turtle Island, and who knows what's going to happen with the former village site, if that's actually going to go through or what have you, or when it starts going through, is if people read these policies, they will clearly point to these policies and it says shall. And then it really just sets a very adversarial tone to anything that might vary, even though there are places that deal with the downtown. Like it just was what I observed with the village thing, was just that, people focused on these, they hammered on these, it says shall this, and then they didn't want to vary from, but your policy says this. Even if another policy might kind of say something different or point to the downtown areas being viewed and, design wise a little differently. I guess, how do you deal with that in a public relations manner if you're going to keep these policies and have other policies that can allow for something different if it's in the downtown area?
That's helpful.
What if in policy ending in 2.1.4 says new commercial development shall encourage preservation, just like the one before it? Instead of
Isn't 2.1.2 basically saying most of the same thing?
Except it doesn't say commercial development. It just says generally development.
But that would also relate to commercial. So I think Jean is right. You really don't need 2.1.4.
So, then it just basically is saying the same thing because, yeah, it's the same. I guess there's a little bit more leeway in there in the 2.1.2.
But then you're back to the original concern because it says shall be designed to preserve natural features. So
Right.
if you're trying to exclude something, I like the encouraging concept just related to commercial,
Right.
if that's what you're talking about.
2.1.2 allows them to decide, or somebody to decide what is significant. In other words, are these outcrops significant enough that you can't remove them? Obviously, creeks and wetlands get their own protections. Trees, we have separate tree rules for. And we've got grading policies that pertain to topography.
Is significant, and I'm asking this to Andreas, is that a word that you particularly like? Is Andreas on the phone tonight?
I'm there, Jan, but I couldn't hear you.
So the word significant in policy LU 21.2, what Jean was saying is because that word's there, it sort of has that, gives it a, we have to decide what is significant when we're talking about natural resources that they're talking about. Is it a significant tree? Is it a significant rock outcropping?
So is your question whether we should keep the word significant or whether we need to define it here?
What we're saying is what we're trying to do is under 2.1.4 new commercial development, we were suggesting to say be encouraged to preserve, because right now it basically says you have to preserve. And so what we were saying was, well, that's kind of hard for new development, commercial development to come in. What if a tree's grown significantly over the last 20 years since the last general plan? And making it really hard for commercial development to come in on the areas that we have. So then we went back up and it kind of looks like both these policies are the same, except for the significant part.
They're similar. I think you could definitely combine them. I think that the word significant doesn't really have too much of a meaning in this context because we don't have it defined, and this is such a high level document that we can't really come up with a definition of what is and isn't a significant tree at this level. That's really kind of an implementation level thing.
But if we don't use that, then there's no discretion, and makes it look like they should do all of these things, just like 2.1.4. I'm wondering on 2.1.4 if we should just plain say encourage sounds weak to me. What if we went back to the old should? It's not as strong as shall, but it says, hey, we want you to do
Should
it.
and be encouraged to are functionally equivalent for this document. The decision is really whether you want to be as strong as a shall or whether you want to just encourage this.
You don't think should is stronger than encourage?
No.
If somebody tells me I should do something, I take it more seriously than somebody says, I would encourage you to do such and such. Then I feel like take it or leave it.
No, I don't think there's a difference. I should drink less coffee, or I'm encouraged to drink less coffee by my doctor. I think those are functional equivalents. And when we're looking back at this policy and coming up with implementation measures and actually looking at this in the context of a project, this is not a policy that we're going to be able to really hold a developer's feet to the fire over whether or not they're preserving something, because this really just, the way it's been changed now, this is not something prescriptive. This is not something they're going to be required to do. And so the decision for the committee really is whether this is something we want to require or just encourage. How restrictive do we want to be here?
Well, the actual objective starts with the word require in this area.
It does. Maybe we should leave that required and take out 2.1.4.
pleasure of the committee. We can take it out, or we can leave it as shall be encouraged or is encouraged to. New commercial development. Shall be encouraged. Integrate existing natural features. Maybe if I spelled shall correctly.
My recommendation is leave it in there because it specifically deals with commercial development, and I think that will be helpful as we look at design guidelines for the commercial area.
Thank you.
It's
Ramona
also
has
the
a-
sort of policy that we can point to if we come up with some kind of regulation that restricts what can be done with trees.
Correct.
Ramona?
That's okay. I was going to suggest to take it out, but after hearing the commentary just before that, then I guess, yeah, let's leave it in 2.1.4.
As modified.
Yeah, as modified.
Anybody disagree with that?
All right. So this policy here, the red one, just ended up here by happenstance. I don't know that it necessarily goes under objective LU 2.1, but perhaps it does. I just wanted to bring it to the committee's attention and ask their opinion. This kind of goes with the clustering discussion we had previously. So I don't know, I don't want to die on the anthill. I just was pointing out that I don't know where this goes.
So it looks like the objective has to do with the natural environment, and this doesn't this is a generalized statement, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. So to me, this would apply whether you have a natural environment or not.
So maybe we need to look for a different place as we go through.
Fair enough. I just wanted to bring it up. I just don't think it fits here, but I could be convinced otherwise. Again, it's not an anthill when I'm.
Mark, this really goes, that policy probably should go with the overall land use discussion. Basically, this is saying, yes, we have a land use plan. Yes, we have land use designation, but we're not guaranteeing you anything.
Yeah, I wonder if you just put this on the map, literally.
That may be the other solution.
Maybe on the map and someplace written down.
I'm with Gene on that. If it's on the map, nobody will read it. They just look at the picture. Okay, as we go through, we'll figure it out. There's another one. A lot of this is repetition. Okay.
Okay, just two very minor points on the going on to LU3. Downtown here, kind of, it's a different. What we have this one definition of downtown that is that little business corridor, but here downtown seems to refer to the generalized developed area within town because it contrasts it to the predominantly agricultural rural character outside the downtown, which then the downtown is not just that Horseshoe Barn, Taylor Road stretch. So I'm just saying, make sure if we're going to use it in two different ways that we have defined it in two different ways so that people know what we're talking about, just to be consistent. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right on this one. I don't know
I
how.
think we're still safe using the defined term because we say near the downtown.
Okay.
And that is that kind of core, and we radiate out with the intensity. So since we say near the downtown, I think we can still use our defined term because we're still referring to that same defined area here.
Okay,
And
so
we're
we're
just
not,
talking about things that happen near it, not necessarily right adjacent to it.
okay, so the fact that we're saying outside it doesn't matter here. Okay. The other one is a very minor punctuation one in the second line of 3.1. I suspect it should have, instead of a comma, probably a semicolon, because you have a new, it's like a new sentence.
Oh, right here. Yeah, it's a twofer. It really shouldn't be that way. Yeah, okay. All right. It's okay the way it is. Any other changes on these?
The only thing is, again, with the use of downtown, 3.1.1, outside of the downtown, Loomis shall promote a rural residential environment consisting of primarily single-family homes. So are we consistent using downtown, or is this like downtown area? Because right now there's very little residential in the actual downtown, meaning the commercial, between Horseshoe Bar, the couple blocks of Horseshoe Bar, there's actually little to no residential. So again, are we being consistent with the use of downtown or in downtown area?
How about if we said outside of the commercial areas, which just seems kind of a no dub, but that doesn't work.
No, leave the downtown. I mean, we're defining the downtown in our definition. You're going to have it on a map. And
Okay.
I think the point that was made earlier, I think we said downtown core, downtown, and we have to define those and make sure we're consistent, as you said before. But I think that is defined, and I think it's fine for a policy.
So this is calling out single family homes. And I don't know that you want, well, it says consisting primarily. Never mind. Never mind.
Did we define gateway? Because now we've got downtown and gateway with a capital G. In other places, we have gateway with small g, meaning several gateways.
Yeah.
Christy,
I
do we
think
have a
that's-
definition for gateway?
We do have a definition for gateway, but it's kind of generic. So it says a point along a roadway entering the town at which a motorist gains a sense of having left the environs and of having entered the town.
I don't know that that's what was meant here. I think this.
I think this came from a subcommittee, and they were distinguishing the Taylor Road Horseshoe Bar area from the Rayleigh's area where you get off the freeway, but
Right.
that's kind of my memory of that.
Yeah, mine is well, Gene. I agree with you on that one. I don't know that I would call that a gateway. Commercial use should be just get away from, I'm gonna say major thoroughfares or name Taylor and Horseshoe Bar. We don't have commercial anywhere else, do we?
Well, we could get it at Turtle Island, the TD.
That's actually in our old general plan.
Mhm. Yeah, I didn't write it.
It did not come from any of our subcommittees under this version.
I know, but they discussed it, Jan, if you might remember, the Turtle Island and also on the North Horseshoe Bar piece. I would almost go, shall we discourage away from Taylor Road and Horseshoe Bar Road and leave it at that. I know that Turtle Island may eventually have something, Gene, but it's on Horseshoe Bar Road.
That's true.
Ramona?
Yeah, I think I like that suggestion better because I think it gives more a picture of what this really was meant to get across was that commercial development, yeah, should be discouraged, not along Taylor Road or because Horseshoe Bar then would be the other gateway if you want to think of it as, coming into town. So that commercial development, say farther along Sierra College, should be discouraged, and that your commercial development is really centered along Taylor Road and Horseshoe Bar as it gets into town, not further out on Horseshoe Bar, but the gateway, if you will, of the I-80 interchange at Horseshoe Bar.
Maybe I should do that. Horseshoe Bar Taylor Road and Horseshoe Bar Road near night. The way when some clown goes way out on Horseshoe Bar Road, wants to put a Walmart or something, that would be perfect. Okay. Does that please the committee if a little more refined? Now that I've covered it up, there we go.
With me.
Okay, LU5 to designate adequate.
Sorry, do you need the word the Taylor Road? It says, new commercial land use shall be discouraged away from Taylor Road and Horseshoe. Yeah, okay, there you go.
Good catch. Are you studying to be Gene's understudy? LU4, we already talked about. Basically, it's this one here, we've already talked about. So here's the objective: ensure the size and type of commercial areas appropriately scaled for their location in town.
Do we have any control over the public utilities where they're extending?
Realistically, no.
And the other thing to remember, public utility companies are required by state law. If somebody wants to build the utility and pay for it, then they have to extend it. So the only thing limiting public utility extensions today are the lack of funding by the utility itself to extend those things. But if somebody were to come in with a pocket full of money and say, extend sewer and water throughout the town and provide that to the two utility districts, they would be required to do that.
Okay.
Because they serve the whole town.
So we don't really have any control, but it's not going to hurt to leave it in, I suppose.
Correct.
And the next one is obviously the Grove subdivision that's already under construction, therefore deleted.
Correct.
And
I wondered if on the 5.1.2, another exception might be when we have multifamily possible on sites to have other things on them besides downtown. I mean, that could happen as we have to designate some more things.
yeah, I can tell you as a practicing planner, I do not like split designations at all for any reason. They're just a nightmare to administer. They're a nightmare to regulate. And if it were me, I would just do this and delete all of that. Just should be coincident with existing property boundaries.
And since it says should, if there is a case where it makes other sense, then you would do that. So I agree with you, Marcus, to delete that last 3 lines.
I'm actually surprised they didn't catch it when they did their initial review. This still allows it, but it really is up to the town at that point. And it would be
okay. That makes sense to me.
okay. This is kind of a throwaway policy. All right. Hearing no objections, we'll move on here. Encourage an active, varied, and concentrated development life? The heck
Oh,
is-
my question was, what is development life?
It's got little peas and runs around like a mini. Honestly, I'll have to go back to what the.
And then I thought, well, it's sort of like defined in the next section, but it did seem strange when I looked at that.
Let me double check. I know that came out of one of the subcommittees.
I thought it's sort of a petri dish there.
Yeah, me too. Now that I read it, what the heck is that? Okay, I'll check that.
I mean, A and B look good, and they kind of defined that, but it still seems a strange
Yeah, it's not the word
phrase.
either. I think spell check or spell prediction probably messed with it. So we'll check that.
There's probably some good phrase that would capture that, but it doesn't come to mind at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with you. The downtown committee that dealt with the area around train station had a great phrase that I liked, and it's in here somewhere. I'll go back. I think it was in the report that we had reported out. So I just don't know how it got that way. Okay.
So back to that one, there is no definition for downtown core. I mean, we're back to.
Oh, you're good catch. I'm
When-
sorry. And it shouldn't be downtown. That's a good catch. I didn't see that already. I think that. Okay, here we have our nod to Equipiece. And I know that ordinarily you would think this would be in the circulation element, but this is a land use decision to ensure that you can walk or cycle or take a horse, if you like, between different land uses, as opposed to having to get in your automobile and move around. So this is really a directive to the design guidelines that need to be prepared. Not so much worried in the periphery of town because the lots are so far, buildings are so far apart, just isn't really practical. But as you get closer to the core of town, that connectivity, that walkability that I think Ramona was talking about is essential. I mean, that's kind of the reason to be downtown, is to be able to walk.
Mark, it's Bonnie. Again, with the general plan being a vision for the next 20 to 30 years or so, one thing we may want to consider, though, is that is where we have the land and, it would be easy. I think the priority, like you said, should be the downtown where we already have more intensive uses, but I wouldn't want to rule out opportunities that, as this whole region continues to grow, that would make sense 20 to 30 years from now, so.
Yeah, in fact, I think there's policies elsewhere in the plan, Andy, to connect to regional trails and whatnot. So
The
not
circulation element does have policies regarding all of the town and that linkage. So this is specific to your, your downtown areas we're talking this about.
Line 2 on your objective, you've got two subjects, so should that be create rather than creates? Trails and connectivity that create access?
Yeah. Go up to 7.1, Mark. Over to the left-hand side where it says creates. There, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
I guess I'll be writing lines after class again. We had to do that on the chalkboard.
While I'm at it, on item C there, I think it, where appropriate, either needs 2 commas, 1 on each side, or where in doubt, leave it out and take the first one out too.
You know what? I don't like that sort of thing in there at all. What if we just took it out?
Okay.
I don't like the wishy-washy because that's where folks that don't want to play by your rules will start to try to form a gap. And I like to take them out, and the discretion that the town has is always there, whether we have it stated implicitly or not. Somebody has a cool clock that's ticking and I can hear it. I love it.
I'll turn it off.
No, I love it, man. That is some good acoustics when you can hear it.
Candace, wasn't there a suggestion to use the riparian corridors as opportunities for trails? Or is that what this is saying?
You can't really do much in a riparian area because it's protected by the conservation plan. But yes, that's kind of what this is saying here, is that adjacent to it and whatnot, you can have trails. The resource agencies consider riparian corridors and whatnot, and they consider trails as bad as a roadway or development in places. Okay, LU8.
Is there a good reason that we are using should instead of shall here? It's just not practical to make them.
This is more of a political piece. We have no control of the school district, and they made their deal with the state years and years ago on the payment of fees. So there's really not a whole lot we can do for them in that regard. It doesn't rise to an issue, but I don't care.
Okay, well, if that's the case, that's the case.
Ramona has her hand up, Chair.
Go ahead, Ramona.
Actually, I want to go back to objective 7.2. Maybe I'm just not seeing where I'm reading this. It says ensure adequate access and circulation between Horseshoe Bar Road and King Road at the general commercial designations north of the Raleigh Center and at I-80 and King. General commercial, is this the general commercial like way north of the Raleigh Center? Because there's general commercial at Raleigh's, then there's Town Center, which would be Vinyl Perkins. Or are we talking the general commercial at like King and Taylor? I mean, where are we exactly talking about with that land use with 7.2?
So that, I think, might have been the general commercial off of King that has been changed, right? Because this is an old objective.
It could be the general commercial that used to be behind Rayleigh's.
Oh, okay.
So does this still make sense, Christy?
I don't know if it still makes sense.
Probably not.
There
I
was
mean, it
general-
would need to change.
North of Raleigh, this was from our old plan, I think.
Mhm.
Yes, but there was general commercial right off of 80, right at 80 and King Road. Those were designated general commercial prior to the village.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't this just apply to all commercials? So you just take out the specific locations and just say ensure adequate access and circulation at commercial.
Well, I think this is specifically talking about the Duck Barnes Road, which is hugely important for our town to have access from King to Horseshoe Bar Road.
Can't we just say that? Ensure adequate access between King and Horseshoe Bar Road and be done with it?
Sounds good to me. But Ramona has her hand up.
Oh, no, it is, you're fine. The discussion is what I've been trying to pinpoint that, maybe we need to just get rid of those specific, the reference to those commercial areas.
Does that work then for the committee?
Do you disagree with that?
Is that description then, is that description then adequate for the next two policies?
And then we do have a public comment.
Is there a difference between general commercial and office professional? Because on King Road, it's still classified as office professional at King and Eden.
So the question is there a difference between office professional and general commercial?
We just took, yes, there is a difference, but we just took it all out. We just said,
It's the office professional. Not general commercial.
It's right here. So I think it's right here. You just go back here, it should be this area. That's above the area.
Or it's something right by Doc Barnes, talking right here.
It would be right at the end of that little, this is right here. Right there. It's this, between this road and this road.
I guess I was seeing just saying general commercial, and it's not, there's no more general commercial over
Right.
this office
That's,
professional.
yes, we took out all those designations from this so that we wouldn't need to worry about what the land use is. Does that make sense? It's just more directional now.
Oh, that's fine, because I just saw general commercial, I'm like, no, we lost general commercial.
Right.
With those, we moved to office professional.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
so Andy, these aren't the policies that we drafted with the Horseshoe Bar Committee Road, are they?
No, I think that's an existing one, and I don't think that's necessary here because we already have policy in the conservation element to protect those corridors.
I agree with you.
So
I wonder if we just make this a policy and not an objective and then kill these two policies.
that would be possible. That would be appropriate to do.
Well, the second policy is kind of fits into a kind of access and circulation different than automobile, which is probably what we're thinking of in the first one.
The circulation element already covers that though. So this, again, this is in the land use element. So we have to look at it. Are we driving a land use in a certain way because of these goals, policies, and objectives? And we're not in this case. I think objective 7.2, if it becomes a policy from up above, does, as I think Jan said, we want Doc Barnes and that saying we want to assure adequate access.
So are you saying we should move then that policy up above where we talk about providing trails? Because it doesn't have, yes, it does. This is talking about extending existing trails.
And again, that's not a land use decision, that's a circulation decision. So I don't think it's necessary in this land use element. Because the circulation element has a number of policies about extending existing trails and having them along the corridors, so in some ways this is duplicative of what we have in the circulation element.
We could also make it D under policy 711, since it does talk about extending trails to connect.
Okay.
I think it belongs up there.
Whoa. Oh, don't be messing with my brain today. Now it's just being mean.
Let me tell you,
All right. Okay, so that went away there.
So do you need a policy then? Can you go back underneath LEU 7.2? Oh, you are there.
I would recommend we make policy LU 7.13. And this is unnecessary. This policy has been repeated multiple times. And whenever you have one policy that refers to another element, you kind of wonder, but
Yeah, that's not necessary to do.
But 7.1 is for pedestrian, right? It's for reducing cars.
yes, minimizing the need to use, yes. Chris, you're right. If we're going with that, this is actually talking about a road between Horseshoe Bar and King Road, not pedestrians.
Yeah, it's part of the specific policies related to the village area. That's where that comes from.
7.1.2 is not really pedestrian either. It has to do with cars.
But it does, yeah. The only way you could squint and look at that is you don't want to encourage traffic where we're encouraging people to walk and bike, but you are right. So maybe that's just the right spot. And honestly, that should be in the circulation element, not the
Correct.
Okay, I'll work with Christy on that. Do we want to
that one may be kind of a holdover from when we had a lot of general commercial behind Rayleigh's, or a lot of commercial, and we don't have much anymore.
just for good, would this be okay if we did this and just put this also in the circulation element?
That really belongs in the circulation element.
Yeah.
That's not a land use driver.
And then I would just delete this as unnecessary unless the.
So we have that in the
Conservation.
yeah, over and over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wow, we did some neurosurgery there.
Well, that's partly what we do. What needs to be done is make this consistent and clean.
Yeah, so the committee's happy with that. I'll scroll down. Okay, this is where we started. Balance of densities. This is a strained objective because we do this anyway, and we're required to do this by state law. But this goal seemed to be important to the town, so we left it, and that gave us an objective that basically tells us to do what we're already doing. These are balance items. And then we have these policies here. This is a directive to the zoning.
Do these things all fit with consulting service providers we routinely do that, but are these policies things that belong with consulting service providers?
Probably not. These are approximate. The reason they ended up here was affect the quality of life in adjoining neighborhoods. So,
and do we need a different objective for this section?
Possibly, we could do an objective for that.
We do consult with service providers, but that really doesn't relate to all these policies.
You're right. So we would say something here. Let's see. I don't know. When everybody says adversely affect the quality of life, it's such a subjective term. I have no idea what they mean.
Why would you change that?
Randy was asking, why do we change that?
What we're doing here, what Jean's pointing out is these policies here do not really go with this objective that says continue to consult with service providers. These two do have to do with service provider consultation. And this goal is a little odd because up here it's talking about public services, and then here it's talking about quality of life in the adjoining neighborhood. And these two policies talk about ensuring that the new parcel adjacent to the old parcel are similar in size and that lighting doesn't spill over.
So we're talking about service providers, right?
Well, up here we are, but the goal is kind of a split personality. The first part talks about service providers, and the next part talks about quality of life in the adjoining neighborhoods.
And I would think you'd always want to consult with your service providers before, as part of that early on process of a proposed project.
Yes, we do that. We do that regularly now.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So what I'm referring, the only reason I had recommending that we add this objective is because it speaks to the second half of that, which is adversely affect quality of life in adjoining neighborhoods. So these two policies talk about adjacency, the edge, if you will, that we talked about all that long ago. And this also talks about lighting and that it be shielded.
What do we think of this, the first policy there about requiring parcels to be increased apparently above what, to smaller than their zoning would allow? Isn't that what it's saying?
No, there's no way you can, I mean, it has to be compliant with the general plan land use designation.
Right. So what this says here, if you're gonna propose a subdivision where the new parcel is smaller than the adjacent ones, where they're adjacent, the new parcels have to be similar in size. It's not particularly well written, but that's what
So if you have an let's say an R1 subdivision next to an RE subdivision, you can't put 1 acre parcels next to 2.3.
if they front the same street, that's what it currently reads. This is,
I'm trying to picture what's going on over in the area that has some R1 and some 2.3 all kind of jumbled in there. And
It also says it should, and it doesn't say shall, so I guess it's your discretion.
this is a pretty common request by people adjacent to new subdivisions. If they have a 10,000 square foot lot and somebody's proposing a 6,000 square foot lot, people get annoyed, and this allows you some flexibility to be able to switch those around.
well, we didn't do that with No Name Lane and the Grove, that's for sure. Because those are bigger parcels. The next part, we didn't make them have a big parcel in their subdivision lot. Well, but they weren't on the same street either, I guess. That's one of the differences. So
This is all about street view. Any grief? Should we move on?
I think the only grief would be the should not really being enforceable.
What's the pleasure of the committee? Do you want to make this more of a requirement?
I don't know that I want to make it more of a requirement, because that's something that people know when they have bigger parcel next to a smaller zoned parcel. They know that that's the possibility. But we're encouraging it to.
Okay. And then the lighting.
The lighting fits better now with the new objective wording than it did with service providers.
Yes, I agree. Good catch. Okay, so here we have create an identity, appearance, land use, design guidelines, implementation of development code.
What is the development code? Is that something we already know by another name, or is that a new thing?
I thought that's how we were referring to the zoning ordinance, or are you guys referring to it as zoning ordinance?
We refer to it as a zoning ordinance. You guys refer to it as a development code, maybe.
Well, part of the reason is that development requirements occur in more than just the zoning code, but I can certainly put zoning code here.
No, leave it as development code, because part of the strategy here is that the town of Loomis, instead of just a zoning code, has a development code, which incorporates a number of things in one location to make it easier for the community to understand what is required. So my recommendation, leave it as development code. That is the practice that is currently occurring in the state of California, is to use the development code to guide development. And
Might
zoning,
we want to define that term?
Christy, do we have it defined already?
No.
What we do by the next time.
Yeah, we can add that definition then.
I don't understand what LU9, what the sentence means. Provide for the integrated development of all parcels. I don't understand what the sentence is even asking.
Which one?
The very top LU9.
This basically is design. I agree. I don't know what integrated development means. They're not all going to be connected. So a consistent design that follows the design guidelines. You can almost just go, oops, shoot. Doggone it. Okay, here we go. Mix up the end uses. More development. How about that?
So this is saying create a mix of land uses for development of all parcel. I really have no idea what, I don't know. It makes no sense to me. The whole thing makes no sense.
You got it. Okay, so part of this, I believe, is supposed to deal with the design guidelines. This is actually the land use diagram and doesn't really belong here. Create an identity, appearance.
I would take out for all development, but yeah.
I believe this was originally referring to Turtle Island. And I believe they wanted it developed as a single cohesive plan. And it somehow got morphed into doing more. But if it's done this way, then it's basically supporting the design guidelines.
Correct.
Basically, a couple of the first item here doesn't fit. It's refers to the area behind Rayleigh's, and the second one does not fit with Turtle Island, but all the rest of them, from 9.2.3 down refer to their Turtle Island, but the first two, one of them is for the land behind Rayleigh's and the other one is down at Rockland Road. And so they kind of don't fit with all the rest of this stuff. All the rest of these policies, which are basically policies for tourist destination.
Well, I don't know necessarily that I see that. This is basically generic design guidelines. This says it shall deny projects that aren't consistent with them. This says new development shall avoid the construction of sound walls. Commercial development shall be subject to design criteria, the heritage of the town.
Okay.
And the town will adopt design standards that will specifically address the business corridor of Taylor Road and Horseshoe Park, which makes sense to me.
Oh, I was looking at the 9.2 stuff, so we're not there yet, I guess.
Okay.
Sorry. I don't have any. The only question I had this was on sound walls, which has always been our policy. But sometimes I think we want to make a nice view for the people driving by on the freeway to the detriment of the people that have to live with the freeway noise. And we did allow a tiny bit of sound wall in Hunter Oaks. And then there's a big berm, but the berms, while they can be effective, take up an awful lot of the space in Heritage Park. I'm just wondering, do we still want to be that adamant about sound walls?
Why do we not allow them?
Because people we want to make it look nice when people drive by on the freeway.
Oh, to encourage people to come off and enter the town.
Or just appreciate the nice look of Loomis. But, which sounds nice, except I feel like if we're doing that to the detriment of the people that have to live here, should this get a new think?
This is new development. Should we be putting people near a freeway that needs a sound wall?
Well, you have land uses that do that, Mark. So we'd have to look at the land use diagram to move people away. But
fair enough. But it says
obviously Hidden Grove is going. That area does have near the freeway.
Okay.
Heritage Park would be near the freeway.
It says shall avoid. Doesn't say it shall not have, but.
Oh, okay. If that's what that means, if shall avoid doesn't mean it has to avoid.
I mean,
that's the way I read it.
Pretty high bar, though. I mean, they'd have to convince you that they need one. But it's the will of the committee.
And there is a noise policy in the health and safety element regarding sound walls.
What does it say?
So that says it has a 3-tier approach. So it wants to use sound walls as sort of the last approach. So first would be a site layout and building placement to place uses away from heavier sounds. The second would be acoustical treatment of the building. And then the third is berms and or wood or concrete barriers, so sound walls. So it actually says in the objectives in there, sound walls would be discouraged, but they're not prohibited. So again, it's not a complete banning of them. It's just that they're prohibited unless needed.
Okay.
Then that conflicts with this.
Does that conflict with this?
No.
No. This is saying.
It's saying avoiding it.
Okay.
Since we have all that in the noise element, do we need it here?
It's more of an aesthetic than anything else.
I think Mark, this is an aesthetic, especially so you don't look like you're driving through Los Angeles, that you know that you're driving through Loomis.
Fair enough. Do we want to tweak this then so that it says noise walls shall be landscaped or something along those lines, or that the design guidelines shall include noise walls? Because the way it reads now, it's just the noise wall up or down.
That might be a better use of the policy to add something like landscaping or a treatment for it.
How about?
Would it be appropriate to add berms when there's enough room for it?
Right.
Berms take a huge amount of space.
Should we maybe put something in there to have them go to the other policies with regards to noise? Like a pointer?
My thinking, Chair, was that we would modify this policy to require that the design guidelines include, many cities, for example, have very elaborate design guidelines. If you want to put up a noise wall, you have to landscape it. It can't be just a concrete wall. It has to have some texture and design to it, those sorts of things. And that's something that you would put in the design guidelines. And you basically make it painful enough that they would really try to design around it and only use it in minimal places, which is really your goal.
Okay.
I'll work with Andy and Christy on that and bring that back.
And then I just wanted the committee to know that on LU 9, it did come out specifically just for the Turtle Island property. That came right out of our general plan 5.A for the tour of the Turtle Island property. And now we are adding a whole objective, correct, based on that?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so 9.2.
I still think that conflicts with what Christy read.
Which one, this?
When you say you shall avoid construction of sound walls, that to me says you shall not build them.
It's all going away, Beth. We're going to revise that to have the noise, design guidelines shall include provisions for noise walls or something along those lines. We're going to leave the regulation of whether a noise wall can go there or not in the noise element. And this will read something along the lines of design guidelines, design standards, whatever we want to call them. Something along those lines. That's almost implementation at that point. So we'll have that discussion with Andy and Christy, and it may just get dropped. But you are, the way the discussion in the committee was that this would go away altogether. More to your point.
But you're saying design guidelines. So this is in the general plan authorizing us to have guidelines regarding sound walls, noise barriers.
Should call it a sound wall.
It should probably be standards, since we use standards on 9.1.4.
Yes. That we just did it. Okay, so does that address that, Beth? Does that make that better? Okay. Objective 9.2. This is the Turtle Bar area.
Right, and 9.2.1 really came out of the description in the general plan of the specific area plan for the land behind Rayleigh's.
How does that fit into this? Oh, I see. Okay. Do we want to carve those out separately with a separate objective?
To what extent is this relevant? this is kind of what we would have, if we had our druthers, we could have it back. But if Hidden Grove goes through, it's kind of a moot point. So what do we do about that? We'd put it in because if
Leave it
it
in,
falls,
just leave
if
it
it
in,
falls,
just, it may, Hidden Grove may or may not happen. So I would leave it in as a policy at this moment in time.
okay, but it shouldn't be for south of I-80. It should be in its own section.
Okay, I'll give it its own objective for north of I-80, right?
Correct.
So
A lot of 9.2.1 is not applicable because the designations have changed on that area.
That's true.
do we want
I would almost just leave the first sentence and remove everything else.
to remove all of this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that says what you want to occur, which is this gradual transition of intensity between I-80 and basically Taylor Road.
But it still isn't, but it needs its own objective, I think, because it's not south of I-80.
What I just
Or
said.
else you need to change 9.2.
Gene, that's what I just put right here. It was a note.
Oh.
To make the adjustment. Sorry. You may not be able to see that. It may be off your screen. But I made
Oh,
it.
okay.
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 So
North of I-80.
I see it now. Thank you.
so would it just be commercial, or would it also be visitor and destination oriented?
Oh, that would be commercial.
Okay. And then this, Gene, is where you thought the policies started to get back to where they were supposed to be?
You have the one that you just wrote. It says commercial should be commercial.
Did I really? That's awesome.
Encourages the development of commercial uses
to
be
yeah.
commercial.
I just wanted it to be commercial. I hope that comes across.
Get us some sales tax.
That's right.
Okay.
It's sales tax for the town. Sean will be happy if I do that. Okay.
The next one, 2.2, doesn't really belong there either. This skips down from Turtle Island area down to Barton and Rockland Road.
Yeah, you're right.
And I'm wondering if it was meant at the time for Poppy Ridge area, or if there is other land that it would fit. And this is for Northwest. I'm wondering if some of this language wouldn't be appropriate for the school site, which would be Southwest, because we would want to encourage these same kind of setback, native vegetation, terrain, present appearance as a rural corridor, access without individual driveways. That the language is good, but I don't know that. I'm trying to look and see if there's anything it would refer to on the north side of Rockland Road currently.
Seems oddly specific for an area.
It is. It's
Well,
in the
it may have been for Poppy Ridge subdivision, which probably was under proposal at the time.
So this is Rockland Road, and Barton and Rockland is right here. There's Rockland. I don't know what it's trying to get at, honestly.
I mean, there could be something north of the church, but I don't know how you get into it.
It was revised by the committee. I agree it doesn't belong under the Turtle Island discussion, but do we still need it? Is it something that's there?
I don't think we need it, given all the other policies that we have regarding vegetation, whatever, in the conservation element, parks and recreation element. I don't know if this does anything for us.
And with this wording, it's not really enforceable anyway.
No.
How about access roads?
This is,
Leave that up to the subdivision?
that's a circulation element issue. If you're going to restrict access to a road, you do that through your circulation element.
Right.
And it is done, Gene. We do have roadways
Okay.
do access.
So in other words, this probably did refer to Poppy Ridge, which has been for a long time now.
Okay. I'm struggling to find a reason for the policy, but I don't want to just willingly delete it if the committee thinks otherwise.
Well, Mark, I wanted to let you know if you could just give me a moment here. This is Jan. Basically, everything that we've been looking at is been carved out of policies for specific areas and put in sort of different order than what was in our old general plan. So I think that's why it feels like seems like it's really confusing. This was item number 3 in our general plan, under policies for specific areas. So I'm wondering how it got constructed this way.
Well, it got constructed this way because we've revised it and streamlined the land use element.
Right, but it seems to be kind of hopping around where the old general plan, had it in more of a specific order. But I just wanted to point out to the committee that it's a little confusing how we have it in the old general plan under policies for specific areas, and then those specific areas are actually stated in this old general plan, but then it's kind of more vague in what you've redone it as, is what I'm kind of saying. So that's why it's a little bit confusing.
If we do keep any of this, could we, the middle of the fourth line down, could we put setback as 2 words?
Yeah.
Ralph and I looked it up today, and setback is always a noun, and the verb has to be 2 words.
Right. So I have lots of issues with this policy. Mainly it's not enforceable and there's no way to measure any of it. Doesn't specify what the setback is supposed to be. It really doesn't do much of anything from a planning perspective. This would be really confusing to implement.
Ramona, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand the need for this particular policy. It relates to a specific area that, why would this area be called out any different or have to be developed any different than any other res estate parcel or parcels that are not, that would have future subdivision proposals. Does that make sense? Why are we singling out this one? And why would we do that at this level of a document, to single out a specific parcel of res estate or a group of parcels of res estate?
Well, I think the main thing is the preserving the appearance as a rural road corridor, which is important, I think, for that end of Rockland Road, because we have the school coming in and the R1 subdivision and the church that crossed the road that may want to put in 52 units. That's not confirmed with anybody at the church. Somebody else told me that. So the concept of, if you look at the corner, the Nuns property there, some of these things I think would be good for that one to have, to say we want setbacks and we want preserving the rural corridor look, because I've heard people say, well, there are apartments on Rockland Road already in Rockland, so, just build on out.
So would this go under where we talk about the objective of, following design guidelines, or under circulation? I mean, right now it's not appropriate where it's at, because the south of I-80 would be talking about Turtle, or the, where it's kind of situated is more talking about Turtle Island. So it's really in the wrong spot if we're going to keep it. But,
Yes.
How is that any different than any residential estate development planned along Sierra College Boulevard, for that matter? You'd want to have the same
Do we have
application
any?
of standards.
Do we have any along Sierra College?
Sure, that's the
all the northern part.
Yeah,
you're right.
So
And then a lot
I
of
would
that-
say it's the same application of standards, if you ask me.
A lot of that is RA, and that the Nuns property, if it gets rezoned, will be R1, not RE anyway,
Mhm.
which makes it even more dense than was envisioned.
Randy?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would suggest that we adjourn for the evening because we're getting into some very significant discussions and we have a ways to go. And I think it'd be better if we did it while we're fresher.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Also, I want to kind of go back to what I was saying, trying to explain, is that, Mark, if you look at the policies for specific areas, what I think has happened is some of them have been pulled out and put in here, and they relate to different areas in our town. And I just feel like this particular iteration of this policies and goals, if maybe we could just take a look at it and note on each policy where this is from, because as I'm going through here, I'm seeing the Rayleighs area, and then I'm seeing Turtle Island, and it just seems a little confusing. And so maybe you and I can meet after the meeting, and I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. But I kind of think this needs to be reformed a little bit. So.
Okay, so we should probably talk about that. Do you want to go back to the old format? I was under the impression that we weren't going to use the old format.
So no, I think Randy's right. This is probably going to be a lot more complicated than we thought at this point. But I think if you and I get together and I can show you what I'm talking about, I think that we need to kind of order these objectives and put the policies that go with the objectives, that go with the specific areas that we're talking about. It's just that it just matter geographically, it's kind of all over the place. But we just need to, we can meet and get that squared away, and then maybe redo this section for the next meeting. Just in terms of ordering.
And I suspect that all the rest of these 9.2.3 down, to me, they look like they probably all came from the Turtle Island tourist destination area.
Yep, it did.
That's what it says here in the comment. But yes. Okay.
All right, so it's after 8 o'clock, and we need to set another date for our next meeting. Mary Beth, you looking?
Yeah. Would the committee like to meet next week at any point? Tuesday is out, I can tell you that, but we can make Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, or then the following week.
I'm not available next Wednesday.
And I'm not available next Monday.
How about Thursday, the 24th?
Oh,
I'll go with the committee.
I'll be on a plane, so I won't be able to be here, and I need to be able to meet with Jan ahead of time. So that's probably not going to work.
What about the week of the 28th?
I can do Monday, Tuesday of that week.
Everybody good with the 29th?
I will
Randy,
town.
Sure.
Beth, did you say yes?
No, I'm out of town on the 20th and 29th.
Okay, 30th is Wednesday. Any objections?
I'll be in the air again.
How about the 31st?
And I can't do the 31st.
Okay. April,
Wow.
week of April 4th.
Seems like we should get way out. Huh?
Yeah. Nothing next week, huh?
I got a question. Do we have a due date for when this committee needs to be done?
Last month or two?
Yeah. I'll go with that.
Did we decide we couldn't do Tuesday? 22nd?
Tuesday the 22nd?
Okay.
Yeah, planning meeting.
Planning commission.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
We could do it earlier in the day on Tuesday instead of 6 o'clock in the evening. If anybody would entertain 3 o'clock in 2 hours.
Yep,
We can do 3.
count me in.
No, it's gonna be a lot for you guys, plus
I'm not worried about me.
Do this for 2 hours and then do a planning.
yeah, Bonnie's not, as a planning commissioner, she's already prepping for that.
And I'll be trying to keep it around school.
All right, I'm out of here.
Andy,
All right, everybody.
recommendations.
Good night, Randy, thank you.
All right, ready?
How do you feel about going into April?
I think
Randy's gone.
Well,
Randy's gone on the 29th? He's gone.
the following week, does it look like we could do a 3 o'clock one the following week since the evening's not working?
I can do 3 o'clock on it.
Wait, somebody couldn't, I thought. Bonnie,
Beth?
Jan?
So,
What day are you talking about?
on the, I think the 29th was Beth. Beth couldn't
Beth
make
was
it.
out.
Right, Beth? The 29th?
Yeah, I'm not in town on the 28th or 29th, but you know, if you have a quorum, then I don't have to be here. That's fine.
And these days a quorum is
Well,
kind
maybe
of challenging.
Call Tim and AJ and try to see if we can why don't we tentatively set it for that and see if we can get them to attend.
Are we purposefully avoiding Fridays for some reason?
No, I'm available on Fridays.
Or Saturday or Sunday.
I'm open on those days as well, whatever.
I say all day on Saturday, get this
There you
done.
go. Get it done.
I
Marathon.
would show up on the 19th just to do that. As long as we can get milkshakes afterwards.
No, that works for me. The 25th actually is our meeting, our strategic planning meeting, I think, for the council.
Friday the 25th is our strategic in the morning.
Are Saturdays out? 26th?
Better not.
Running out of options. Let's see.
So we're up to Wednesday, the 30th, or the Thursday, the 31st. Any objections there?
We'll be out of town, as I mentioned.
Okay. So
I could do that Friday if you want to do April 1st.
I'm not available that Friday.
Okay.
Or
Wow.
Monday the 4th.
Man.
So that puts us to Tuesday the 5th, Wednesday the 6th, Thursday the 7th, Friday the 8th, Saturday the 9th.
When pick one of those days and pick a day of each of the other week and throw it out to everybody. Get a hold of Tim and everybody and see if we can get close to a quorum. We might not be able to get a date where absolutely everybody can come. We could go to May.
I think we should go back to the 29th, and I'm gonna call Tim personally.
If we can get a quorum, that'd be great.
Who was it that could not come the 29th?
Beth.
Yeah.
You have to stay home, Beth.
You don't want to take us on your vacation, Beth?
I wish it was a vacation. I have to work out of town.
Oh,
Tell them that you
I
need to be excused at 6 o'clock.
In the morning, I will sit down and provide a bunch of dates, and everybody please reply to that. A lot of times I send those out, I get 3 or 4 people that say yes or no. If one of the 4 say no, I end up without a quorum, have to recirculate. So, I'll make an attempt. If not, it'll be the week of the 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th, or Saturday the 9th.
I hate to
I
go
don't know.
that far out.
Yeah.
Me too. But we gotta find a quorum.
all right, well, let's try for the 29th, and we'll wait and see from your emails, what we can get. And again, thank you, everybody, for your time this evening. We will be in touch for sure, and I'll call this meeting adjourned, 8:11. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.